The rain fell in long, silvery sheets as the car wound up the lonely coastal road. On the cliffside ahead, a sprawling stone mansion loomed against the stormy sky. Half castle, half haunted dream. Superman sat in the back seat, arms crossed, watching the structure with quiet curiosity. He'd flown through alien war zones and battled gravity beasts in deep space. But this was something else. "Are you sure this is it?" he asked the driver, voice calm but skeptical. "Yes, sir," the old man replied, eyes fixed ahead. "It's yours now." The mansion had belonged to Reginald Thorne, a billionaire scientist who vanished decades ago. Superman had only met him once, briefly, during a rescue at a crumbling space station. He hadn't thought much of it then. But last week, a lawyer in a dusty office handed him a key and a single-page letter that read, "You'll need this place someday. Take care of it." And what's inside? Superman stepped out of the car, the rain sizzling off his shoulders. The air smelled of salt and thyme. He pushed open the great iron doors with a low groan, revealing a vast entry hall full of shadows and forgotten echoes. The mansion didn't feel abandoned. It felt asleep. "Hello," he called out, voice bouncing through the stone corridors. No answer, just the sound of the wind. He explored slowly, boots clicking on the marble floor. Paintings of distant galaxies and strange machines lined the walls. Books in alien languages filled the shelves. A soft hum echoed beneath his feet, deep, mechanical, and very much alive. In the study, the fireplace crackled to life as he entered. A soft, female voice came from nowhere. "Welcome home, Superman." He froze. "Who said that?" "I am Nyara, Mansion Interface and Reactive Assistant. I was instructed to activate upon your arrival." Superman tilted his head. "All right, Nyara. What else did Reginald leave behind?" There was a pause, then a sound like doors unlocking somewhere far below. "Foreign entity detected in sublevel 6. Superman narrowed his eyes. "Define foreign." "Non-terrestrial. Female. In stasis." He was already moving before she finished. A hidden elevator took him deep underground, past levels lined with alien tech and glowing symbols. The final door hissed open to reveal a round chamber, lit by soft blue light. At its center stood a crystal pod. Inside floated a girl, no older than 20, her skin faintly luminous, hair like threads of silver ink drifting in suspension. She looked peaceful, almost angelic. Superman stepped closer, heart beating slow but heavy. A message appeared on the pod's surface in shifting letters. "Do not go here until Earth is ready." He stared at the words, then at her. She looked lonely. Superman placed a hand on the glass. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" Myra spoke again, softer this time. "Her name is Elira. She carries the blood of 3 empires, and many will kill to find her." Superman's jaw clenched. He was used to enemies, used to danger. But this felt different. This wasn't just another mission. This was a beginning. He looked up at the pod, lightning flashing in the ceiling's reinforced glass above. "Well," he said, voice calm but steady, "guess I better find out what I just inherited." The lights dimmed as the stasis pod hummed louder. Something had just awakened. The hum of the stasis pod grew louder, vibrating through the floor beneath Superman's boots. He stepped back, his mind racing. The message on the pod's surface had left him with more questions than answers, but the girl inside, she was more than just a mystery. She was important. That much was clear. He didn't want to break the seal, didn't want to release whatever danger might be contained within, but something about her, something in his gut, told him that waiting was not an option. With a smooth motion, he pressed a button on the pod's side. A hiss of escaping air followed, and the glass began to slide open, revealing the girl more clearly now. The soft, silver strands of her hair floated around her like a halo, and her skin shimmered with a pale, ethereal glow. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, almost too perfect, as if she were sculpted from moonlight and stardust. Her chest rose and fell in slow, even breaths, and then, without warning, her eyes flickered open. Superman stood frozen for a moment, his breath caught in his throat. Her eyes were a shade of violet that seemed to glow, like stars peeking through a nebula. They locked onto his instantly, sharp and alert. For a long second, there was silence. Then she spoke, her voice clear and unafraid, though there was a faint tremor to it, like she hadn't spoken in ages. "Who are you?" Superman hesitated, unsure of what to say. He had faced countless alien species, each with their own manner of speech and culture, but this was different. This wasn't a battle. This was something else entirely. "I'm Superman," he said, his tone steady but curious. "I was sent here to find you." Her eyes widened slightly, the smallest flicker of recognition passing across her face. She pushed herself up slowly, her movements graceful, yet hesitant, as if her body was still adjusting to the idea of movement after so long in stasis. "Sent," she repeated, her voice trembling slightly. "No one should have known I was here." Superman stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "Who are you? What's going on here?" The girl blinked at him, the confusion in her eyes deepening. She seemed to consider his words for a long moment, then shook her head, as if trying to clear the fog from her thoughts. "My name is Elira," she said quietly. "I was sent to Earth to hide, to wait." "Wait for what?" Superman asked, leaning forward. Elira looked away from him, her gaze drifting down toward the glowing floor of the chamber. For a brief moment, she seemed far older than she looked, like someone who had borne 1,000 years in silence. "The galaxy is at war," she murmured, almost to herself. "And I was meant to be a key." Superman frowned, sensing the weight of her words. "A key to what?" She glanced back at him, her eyes now filled with something darker, something dangerous. "To peace, or to destruction, depending on who finds me." Superman's heart skipped a beat. He had heard of intergalactic power struggles, of ancient prophecies and weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. But Elira didn't seem like a weapon. She seemed fragile, like a flame caught in a windstorm. Elira stood up from the pod with surprising strength, though she swayed slightly as if still getting used to being awake. She looked at Superman, her eyes narrowing with purpose. "You should not have woken me," she said quietly, her voice now tinged with urgency. "But now that you have, you need to understand. They will come for me." Superman's jaw tightened, the stakes becoming clearer. "Who is they?" Before she could answer, the mansion's Myra interrupted. "Warning. Unidentified vessels detected. Inbound. Hostile." Superman's muscles tensed. This was just the beginning. He glanced at Elira, who nodded grimly. "They are here," she whispered. The storm outside seemed to grow louder, as if the very sky itself was preparing for the chaos ahead. Superman stood tall, determination filling his chest. He wasn't just going to protect her. He was going to protect Earth, too. "Then we'll deal with them," he said, his voice a low growl. Elira's gaze softened, just for a moment, before the storm of war began to close in around them. The storm outside had turned into a full-fledged fury, but inside the mansion, the air was tense with a different kind of charge. The metallic hum of the mansion's hidden systems was now a constant undercurrent, vibrating through the stone floors. Superman stood beside Elira in the cold, dim-lit hallway, his mind racing. He could feel the change in the air, the coming of something important, something dangerous. Elira's eyes had darkened since she first woke, the weight of her words still hanging in the air. She was right. The enemy was coming. "I need to show you something," she said, her voice firm, yet filled with a quiet urgency. She started walking, her steps light but purposeful. Superman followed, matching her pace, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the mansion. This place was more than just a house. It was a weapon, or at least it had been built for something far beyond the ordinary. They reached a heavy, steel door at the end of the hall. It was unlike the rest of the mansion's grand design. Plain, reinforced, and a little out of place. Elira turned to Superman, her expression unreadable. "This room holds the true purpose of this mansion," she said, reaching for a hidden panel beside the door. Her fingers moved with precision, and a soft, mechanical click echoed through the hall. The door slid open, revealing a large chamber bathed in soft blue light. Inside was a massive, circular console covered in alien symbols. Holographic projections flickered to life as they stepped into the room, showing maps of distant star systems and swirling constellations. In the center of the room, a large glass orb pulsed with an eerie violet glow. "This," Elira began, her voice barely above a whisper, "is why they'll come for me. And why Earth is now a target." Superman's gaze moved over the orb, his instincts telling him that this wasn't just an artifact. It was something alive, something powerful. He approached it, his eyes narrowing as the holograms shifted, displaying various factions of the galaxy, each marked with dangerous red symbols. Elira watched him closely, her face strained with worry. "The orb contains the key to the Galactic Accord. Or rather, it is the key. My bloodline, my family. We were once rulers of an empire that spanned across this galaxy. But we fell, betrayed by our closest allies, left to scatter across the stars." Superman's heart sank. "And this orb is? It's a relic," she continued. "A piece of ancient technology that connects the blood of my ancestors to the fate of the galaxy. It can open portals to distant systems, establish new alliances, or, if misused, bring destruction to worlds beyond counting." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Superman took a step back, his mind processing the scale of what she was saying. He'd fought alien invaders before, faced down threats that could tear apart planets. But this was different. "Why hide it on Earth?" he asked, his voice low. Elira turned away from the orb, her eyes darkening with something like regret. "Earth was never meant to be involved in this war. Reginald Thorne, the man who left you this mansion, he was part of a secret human alliance with the Galactic Accord. He knew the danger, and he knew what I represented, so he built this place to protect me. And you," she added, her gaze lifting to meet his. "He chose you because of who you are. Because you are human?" Superman finished, raising an eyebrow. Elira nodded. "Yes, and more than that. You're the one who could stop it all. Superman. The Accord trusts humanity. But the Kreth Dominion does not. They'll be here soon, and when they arrive, Earth will have to choose a side. But if you side with me, if you help me unlock the full potential of the orb, we can bring peace, or we can end the war." Superman felt the weight of her words press down on him like a heavy stone. He wasn't just protecting a girl anymore. He was standing on the brink of something bigger, something that could change everything for Earth and the galaxy beyond. A sudden, sharp ping from the mansion's security systems interrupted his thoughts. The AI, Myre, spoke again, its tone cold and clinical. "Warning. Multiple hostile vessels detected, closing fast. ETA, 5 minutes." Superman's jaw tightened. Guess the party's starting early. Elira looked up at him, her face resolute. "It's time, Superman. We're not hiding anymore." He looked at her, then at the orb. The tension in the room was palpable. In the next few minutes, Earth's fate could be sealed. Without another word, Superman turned toward the door. "Let's get ready. They'll learn what it means to face us." The mansion's outer walls trembled as the first blast of energy hit. It was a sharp, guttural sound, like the Earth itself being torn apart. Superman's eyes shot to the windows, where the distant horizon was now streaked with blinding flashes of red and gold. The Kreth had arrived. Elira stood beside him, her face pale but determined. The energy of the moment had shifted again, No longer a quiet wait, but a full-on race against time. They had only minutes, maybe seconds, before the full assault would begin. Mayra's voice cut through the tension. Hostile fleet confirmed. Multiple craft entering Earth's atmosphere. Shielding system activated. Superman stepped toward the massive steel doors that led out to the mansion's courtyard. His muscles were tight, his senses alert to every shifting sound and movement. This was no longer just about Illyria. This was about all of Earth. They won't waste time with negotiations, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone. Not with a target this valuable. Illyria's eyes flicked to him. You're right. The Kreth don't negotiate. They conquer. As if on cue, the walls of the mansion began to hum, a low, metallic growl resonating deep beneath their feet. Panels in the ceiling slid open, revealing weaponized turrets and hidden launchers. The mansion wasn't just a sanctuary. It was a fortress, camouflaged in plain sight. Superman gave a quick glance to Illyria. Stay close. We'll need to move fast. Before she could respond, a brilliant flash of light burst through the glass, followed by the thunderous crack of something large tearing through the air. The first Kreth ship, a sleek, black warbird, swooped low, firing a barrage of plasma beams that raked across the mansion's defenses. The walls shuddered as the beams collided, but the mansion's shields flared brightly, absorbing the impact without giving way. But the Kreth weren't stopping. Not yet. Superman's gaze hardened. He turned to Illyria. Get to the control room. I'll take care of the welcome party. Illyria nodded, her face set in a fierce expression. Be careful. They're not just here for me. They want to wipe out Earth's chances of joining the Accord. I know. He gave her one last, reassuring glance before turning on his heel, his cape whipping behind him. The mansion's main doors slid open with a low hiss, and Superman strode out into the courtyard. The Kreth ship was hovering just above, its underbelly glowing ominously with energy. Superman could hear the deep thrumming of its engines, like the growl of a predatory beast. Without hesitation, he leaped into the air, rocketing up at impossible speeds. He slammed into the ship's underside with a shockwave that sent a ripple through the sky. The ship rocked violently, then began to spiral, its engines sputtering as smoke poured from ruptured vents. Inside, alarms blared, but Superman didn't wait for them to regroup. He tore through the hull with his bare hands, ripping through metal like paper. Kreth soldiers inside were thrown into chaos, scrambling to defend themselves. With a punch that could shatter mountains, Superman obliterated the nearest soldier, sending the alien flying through the cabin. He turned, facing the remaining Kreth warriors, his eyes burning with fury. Who's next? He growled, his voice a deep, resonating thunder. The Kreth responded with a shriek of rage. One of them lunged, an energy blade flashing. But Superman caught the attack mid-strike, twisting the blade out of the soldier's hands before slamming him into the ship's control panel. Sparks flew, the ship's systems failing one by one. As the ship spiraled out of control, Superman hurled the wreckage toward the ground, where it exploded in a burst of fire and debris. He stood in the air, chest heaving with each breath. But there was no time to rest. The sound of more ships closing in filled the air. More Kreth reinforcements were arriving. The battle had only just begun. Superman's gaze flicked back to the mansion, where Illyria was heading for the control room, his only hope for keeping Earth safe. He shot a glance at the horizon, where the first signs of the Kreth fleet's true force began to appear. Dozens of ships, each one larger and more dangerous than the last. He didn't have time to fight them all, but he'd fight as many as it took. Superman's heart beat in rhythm with the pounding war drums of the Kreth fleet overhead. His gaze locked on the horizon, where the first signs of the enemy's reinforcements were appearing. Massive ships, like shadowed behemoths cutting through the sky. There were too many. He knew that, but he wasn't afraid. He wasn't alone. Illyria was in the mansion, working her way to the control room, and he had to trust her to unlock the secrets of the orb. It was the key to ending this. He couldn't afford to fail. With a deep breath, Superman dove back into the fray. The second Kreth warship was coming in fast, its engines glowing red-hot as it closed in on his position. Superman charged toward it, his speed shattering the air like a sonic boom. The ship's cannons lit up, launching a volley of energy blasts that screamed toward him. He twisted midair, the blasts missing him by inches before he closed the distance. He slammed into the ship with the force of a meteor, cracking its hull open. The warship spun out of control, but Superman didn't wait. He tore through its metal skin, ripping apart the structure from the inside. Kreth soldiers screamed as they scrambled to defend their ship, but Superman was faster, unstoppable. With each punch, a soldier was sent flying. With each kick, another ship system exploded. The last Kreth soldier in the vessel raised a plasma rifle, but Superman knocked it from his hands in an instant, sending the alien crashing against the cockpit's controls. Sparks flew as the ship spiraled out of control and plummeted toward the Earth. Superman didn't look back. There were still more ships coming. He shot back toward the mansion, his eyes scanning for Elira. He needed her to open the portal, the one that would allow Earth to reach the galactic accord before the Kreth could turn it to ash. But there was no time to waste. The fleet was almost here. A screech filled the air as another Kreth warbird shot down toward him, a massive ship with twin cannon turrets. It opened fire without warning, beams of concentrated plasma tearing through the air, and Superman was forced to dodge and weave between them. He dove beneath the blast, feeling the heat singe the air around him. The warbird followed, relentlessly tracking his movements. Superman could hear the thrum of its engines as it picked up speed, intent on finishing what the others had started. But Superman had other plans. With a twist of his body, he turned back toward the warship and rocketed upward, using his momentum to slam into the belly of the ship with a bone-shattering crash. The ship's shields flared and crackled under the force of the impact, but it didn't stop Superman. He tore through the ship's hull, sending sparks and debris flying in every direction. The Kreth soldiers were too slow to react. He moved like a blur, punching through consoles, disabling their weapons with the flick of his wrist, until finally, with one devastating strike, he collapsed the ship's central power core. The warbird was finished, spiraling into the ground in a brilliant explosion of fire and smoke. Superman hovered in the air, chest rising and falling with exertion. His eyes darted to the mansion, where he saw a faint glimmer of light from the control room's window. Elira was inside, and the flicker of hope in his chest grew brighter. The Kreth fleet was relentless, but they hadn't anticipated Earth's defender would fight back with such ferocity. Superman wasn't just defending Earth, he was defending the future, and he would not let them take it from him. A final ship broke through the clouds, larger than the rest, its sleek, metallic surface glinting with deadly intent. This was the flagship, the heart of the Kreth assault. If it fell, the rest of the fleet would scatter, but if it succeeded in its mission, Superman's jaw set in determination. He shot forward, faster than light, the ground beneath him blurring into a streak of color. He wasn't done yet. The sky above the mansion was a war zone. The Kreth flagship loomed like a dark cloud, its massive form casting a shadow over the battlefield. Its sleek, angular hull glinted with ominous energy as it descended, releasing a barrage of destructive fire toward Earth. The blast ripped through the atmosphere, sending shockwaves across the land. Superman knew what was coming. His muscles tensed, his every sense attuned to the impending storm. The Kreth had come in full force, but he wouldn't let them win. Not today. Not while Earth still had a chance. He shot toward the massive ship with the force of a comet. The Kreth flagship fired again, a concentrated beam of energy so intense that it left a trail of glowing light in the sky. Superman veered left, narrowly dodging the attack. He could feel the heat of the blast, even from a distance, but he was faster. The ship didn't expect him to be this close, and before they could react, Superman slammed into the underside of the flagship, his fists slamming into the hull with enough force to crack the metal. The ship buckled under the pressure, groaning as if in pain. Sparks flew from the impact site. Superman's eyes blazed with determination. The flagship's defensive shields flickered under his onslaught, but it wasn't enough to stop him. He tore into the ship, his hands cutting through steel and alien technology. His mind focused on one goal: stop the Kreth. Inside, the control room was chaos. Kreth soldiers scrambled, trying to regain control as the ship's systems faltered under Superman's assault. Their leader, a towering alien with sharp, jagged armor and piercing eyes, stood at the center, watching as Superman tore through his fleet with ease. "You think you can stop us, Earthling?" The Kreth leader growled, his voice like gravel grinding together. Superman didn't answer. He didn't need to. His fist collided with the leader's chest, sending the alien sprawling backward, crashing into a console. The leader snarled, getting back to his feet with inhuman speed, drawing a long, serrated blade from his side. "Fool," the Kreth leader hissed. "This is our galaxy. You'll learn your place, human." Superman didn't flinch. He had no time for speeches, not when the fate of Earth and the galaxy hung in the balance. He moved, a blur of motion, dodging the leader's vicious strikes, using the momentum to land blow after blow. The Kreth leader was strong, but Superman was stronger. Each strike shook the very foundation of the flagship. With a final punch, Superman sent the Kreth leader flying across the control room, his body slamming into the back wall with a sickening crack. The alien dropped to the floor, unconscious. But it wasn't over. Superman's eyes darted back to the outside of the ship, where Elira's warning echoed in his mind. "They'll destroy the planet if they can't take it. You must stop them before the portal is activated." He knew what he had to do. Superman turned and rushed for the ship's power core, the heart of the ship's engines. The Kreth might be strong, but their technology was vulnerable, just like their soldiers. He could end this in one strike. Reaching the core chamber, Superman saw the pulse of energy, a swirling mass of unstable power. The ship's systems hummed, and the countdown had already begun. The Kreth weren't just trying to conquer Earth, they were preparing to erase it. With a single motion, Superman drove his fist into the core, shattering it like glass. The energy inside began to destabilize, surging out of control. Red lights flashed, and the ship trembled as if it were alive, realizing too late that it was dying. He didn't waste any time. Superman rocketed out of the ship's wreckage, narrowly avoiding the shockwave as the flagship's engines went critical. The explosion lit up the sky, a brilliant burst of light that illuminated the entire battlefield. Superman descended slowly, his cape billowing in the wind as the debris rained down around him. He stood tall, his eyes scanning the horizon. The rest of the Kreth fleet had already begun to retreat, their morale shattered. Earth had been safe, for now. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. Elira's voice crackled over his comms. "You did it, Superman. The portal is opening." Superman smiled, his chest swelling with pride. Elira had done it. The Galactic Accord was within reach, and Earth's future, their future, was secure. For now, the dust of the battle still hung heavy in the air. Superman stood amidst the wreckage of the Kreth flagship, his chest rising and falling with each steady breath. The distant hum of the planet's atmosphere filled his ears, but it felt strangely quiet now. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. Elira's voice crackled through his earpiece once again, this time tinged with a note of urgency. "Superman, the portal's stabilizing. We've bought ourselves some time, but it won't last. The Kreth will be back, and with them, others." Superman didn't respond right away. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the first streaks of dawn were beginning to break through the smoky skies. It should have been a peaceful sight, the sun rising over the wreckage of the battle. But there was no peace here, not yet. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. The Galactic Accord might be within reach, but the Kreth weren't the only ones who wanted control of Earth. Elira's bloodline, The orb, everything about this mansion, was part of a much larger game, one that was far from over. With a soft sigh, he looked up, scanning the surroundings for any signs of movement. The battle had taken its toll, and though Earth had survived this assault, there was still an uncertain future ahead. He had to make sure the Kreth wouldn't have the chance to regroup. "I'll be there in a minute," Superman said, his voice calm but firm. He turned toward the mansion, where Elira was no doubt finalizing the connection to the Galactic Accord. But something was off. The air was still too quiet, the kind of stillness that came just before the storm. Superman's senses were on high alert. Something was coming. He flew toward the mansion at top speed, his mind racing. Elira needed to be protected, but there was no way of knowing just how far the Kreth were willing to go to stop this from happening. He needed answers, and fast. As he approached the mansion, the ground below shifted. The quiet was broken by a low rumble, then a violent tremor that shook the earth beneath him. Superman stopped midair, looking down at the shaking ground, his eyes narrowing. Something was happening. Something was rising. Without warning, the earth split open. The massive metallic structure began to emerge from the ground. Massive, dark, and pulsating with a sinister energy. It was unlike anything Superman had ever seen. A ship? A weapon? No, this was something much worse. The massive structure towered above the mansion, its surface glistening like obsidian, jagged edges forming spikes that reached toward the sky. Red lights flickered across its surface, and strange, low-frequency hums vibrated through the air. Superman's gut clenched as realization hit him. This wasn't just another Kreth ship. This was something far older, far more dangerous. "Elira," he shouted, his voice urgent. "Get out of the mansion, now." But as he turned to fly back to the mansion, the structure's massive arms began to shift. Two colossal beams extended from it, glowing with an eerie violet energy. A violent surge of power shot out, aiming straight at the mansion. Superman couldn't waste any time. He rocketed forward, covering the distance in mere seconds. Just as the beams were about to hit, he threw his body in front of them, absorbing the brunt of the blast. The force of the attack knocked him backward, but he held his ground, gritting his teeth against the pain. The beams dissipated, but the massive structure above him continued to pulse with dark energy, its presence menacing and foreboding. He could feel the pressure building, like the calm before a violent storm. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just part of the Kreth's invasion. This was something else entirely. Superman looked toward the mansion once again. Elira. He had to protect her. There was no time left. Superman's mind raced as he stood between the massive, pulsating structure and the mansion. The air felt thick with the weight of impending doom, the energy from the colossal machine above him suffocating the sky. The world seemed to hold its breath. "Elira," he shouted, his voice carrying the weight of desperation. There was no time left. He had to stop this before it reached its devastating peak. Elira's voice crackled through his earpiece, faint but clear. I'm trying. Superman, the portal is almost there, but this machine, it's ancient. I can't fully understand it. I need more time." "No." Superman's jaw tightened, eyes narrowing. "There's no time. You are the key. You have to finish it now. If that thing gets fully activated, Earth won't just be destroyed. It'll be erased from existence." He could see her silhouette in the mansion's window, still trying to work the control systems. His heart raced, but he couldn't afford to be distracted. The massive structure above him crackled with energy, a dark cloud swirling above its peak, as if preparing to unleash hell itself. Superman lifted his gaze toward the machine's core, a swirling vortex of violet and red, glowing brighter with each passing second. The beams that had already fired were just the beginning. This thing wasn't just a weapon. It was a doomsday device. Without another word, Superman shot into the air, faster than a bullet, closing the distance between him and the pulsating structure. As he neared the core, a wave of force hit him, slamming him back with the full power of the machine's gravitational field. He gritted his teeth, the sheer intensity of the pressure pushing him toward the ground. He struggled to rise, every muscle in his body screaming against the overwhelming force. But he couldn't give up now. Not when everything he fought for was hanging in the balance. With a roar of determination, Superman powered through, forcing himself forward inch by inch until he reached the heart of the machine. It was alive, its circuits glowing with pulsing energy, the source of the dark power threatening to tear the world apart. He placed his hands on the structure, feeling the pulse of its energy as if it were a beating heart. It was cold, ancient, but it wasn't invincible. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shattered. More Kreth reinforcements poured from the darkness, their eyes glowing with hatred as they surrounded him, their weapons raised, ready to strike. But Superman didn't flinch. He stood tall, his eyes blazing with fury. This ends now. The first Kreth soldier lunged at him, but Superman was faster. He twisted, grabbed the soldier by the wrist, and threw him into the others, knocking them to the ground with brutal efficiency. Each punch and kick landed with the force of a freight train, sending soldiers sprawling. But the machine above him continued to hum louder, its energy expanding in waves, more intense with each passing second. Superman could feel it. He wasn't just fighting for his life now. He was fighting for the future. As the Kreth soldiers regrouped and charged again, Superman fought with everything he had. Every punch, every kick, every move was fueled by the knowledge that Alira was their last hope. He couldn't lose, not when Earth's future was so close. Through the chaos, Superman's eyes flicked back to the mansion. Alira had finally activated the portal, the shimmering gateway opening in front of her, glowing with bright, radiant light. The first wave of reinforcements had already fallen, and now Alira was just a step away from completing the connection to the Galactic Accord. But time was running out. The machine was nearly at full capacity. Superman knew he had one final chance to stop it. With a deep breath, he surged forward. One last time, racing toward the core of the device. He reached out, his hands glowing with the energy that surrounded him. And with every ounce of strength left in him, he crushed the heart of the machine. A final explosion of light and sound erupted, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The machine groaned and began to collapse in on itself, its power spiraling out of control. But this time, it wasn't destroying Earth. It was dying. The Kreth forces scattered, disorganized, as their weapon crumbled. Superman looked back at Alira, who stood tall, her face filled with relief as the portal fully stabilized. The first light of the Galactic Accord poured through, illuminating Earth with the hope of a new future. Superman landed beside Alira, his chest still heaving with the intensity of the fight. She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "It's done," she whispered, the weight of everything lifting from her shoulders. He nodded. "We've won." And as the first ships of the Galactic Accord emerged from the portal, Superman knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.